Employers, what is the most f***ed up thing you have caught your staff doing? Story 1. Back in college, I used to be the day shift manager for a surfboard store in La Jolla Shores, California. We would sell boards to bros and make tons of money. Well, one day, I noticed that one of the surfboards seemed a little weirded out. Upon further inspection, I noticed that the top where the string attached was loose. I took it off and could see there was what looked like dried blood smeared on the inside of the board. I looked at the other boards, and they were all the same. I put in a hidden camera and caught one of our employees named Tristan putting the blood inside the boards. We called the police, and upon questioning, his main motive was to have sharks eat all the surfers so he could have all the tasty waves to himself. Cops didn't really see much wrong with that. They were territorial surfers back in the 82nds probably. We also didn't think that was good enough reason to fire him, so he still works there. Although, we do have to search him for blood before every shift. Story 2. I used to work for a small rural cable company. I was a technician shift manager. One day, we got several calls that porn was being broadcast on the local info channel. So I hop in a service truck and drive to the head end, the substation that the signals are pushed out from. And I see another tech's truck parked in the drive. I just assumed that the other tech had beaten me to the head end, so I go in to assist. As soon as I open the door, I see this tech with his pants around his ankles giving his meat the beating of a lifetime. He stops mid-stroke and just stares at me like a spotlighted deer holding his cock in his hand. Turns out, he had decided to stop in for a nice private and had mistakenly put his porn tape in the wrong VCR, broadcasting it out to the entire service area. He just pulls up his pants, says I guess I'm fired, gets in his truck and takes it back to the office. I never saw him again. We all laughed about that one for a long time. Edit: no, he never knew that he had broadcasted it. Story 3. When I was managing at Jersey Mike's in college, I had an employee who I hired who was a culinary student. I had no idea why he was applying to a sandwich shop, but he seemed alright even though I knew more about food than he did. Immediately we knew something was off when he used the terms wife, fiancé, and girlfriend interchangeably when describing his significant other who worked as a cashier at CVS across the street. Fast forward about a month, and we realized that he is constantly using the internet on our cash register, which was just a touchscreen computer. During the afternoons when it was slow, he wouldn't take care of any of the cleaning, just constantly surf the internet. Around the same time, some of my other employees, who went to the same college as me, started talking about how he was trying to get them to sleep with his wife, girlfriend, fiancé, and eventually him as well. So, one afternoon I tell our franchise owner about this, because we think it's kind of funny, while we are talking about how to get him to pull his share of the weight cleaning. So we decide to check the internet history, and it's mostly been deleted except for a swingers site that he had been to that day. The dumbass had his username and password saved, so we got to see his whole profile, complete with pictures of him and his wife being penetrated by different dudes every which way is possible. We then decide to check the temporary internet files, and we see all kinds of mostly pictures of other swingers who are like fat and 55, but also everything else including a lot of involving mostly horses and women. Needless to say, he didn't have a job after that. Story 4. My first job out of college was an entry-level management position with a uniform, linen rental company. I worked first shift in the plant where everything was sorted, laundered, etc. as part of the management training. I was required to spend some time with the third shift, which was a skeleton crew of maybe a dozen people. There was one semi-attractive girl in the bunch, a little rough around the edges, prettiest girl in the trailer park type. During a break I chatted with her and she told me about her 2 little kids, about their dad being gone. How she worked overnights while her mom stayed with the kids so that she could be home with them during the day. She told me she would go home at the end of her shift and crawl into bed with her littlest one to sleep for a few hours before getting up to get the older one off to school. I thought, wow, she seems really nice and is working so hard to take care of her kids, barely sleeping each night so she can earn a living and still be there for them. What a great mom and a great person. And then on the next break I went out back and saw her bent over the picnic table where people went to smoke, getting backed like a porn star by the guy who ran the washers and dryers. Story 5. I used to work in this factory on an evening shift, most of us college students. I was sort of in charge mostly because I had some seniority. We had one guy on the crew who was constantly late, always going to break early and coming back late, constantly missing days without notice, making the rest of us cover his work. Whenever someone confronted him, he would accuse everyone of being racist. He was the only black guy in the entire factory, so it isn't outside the realm of possibility that someone had said something racist to him. But the truth was the guy was a lazy little shit, and he was trying to duck responsibility every step of the way. Finally, around the end of January, he disappeared. Not unusual, most employees quit working there within a few months, and they do it by simply not showing up anymore. A month later, I'm building parts. I look up and Lazy is standing there, asking why his code didn't work to open the security door anymore. My boss, 5-foot ball of angry female energy, gets right in his face and asks him how he got in and why he's even here. I quote, "I thought I had February off for Black History Month." He also used a disability placard to get a good parking space. He was on the college football team, and later went to prison for stealing books out of dorm rooms and reselling them to the campus bookstore. Edit. I just want to clarify because of a few messages I've gotten. I don't believe that he believed he was going to get February off. I think he f***ed around for a month then panicked because he found out he needed money. And jobs were scarce in our little college town, so it was a last-ditch effort to get his job back. Story 6. Working in the military, I watched over a bunch of the people who didn't have somewhere official to work. They'd do things like escort civilians around while they did contracting work. We had guys come from the prison to do yard work for their work release. I caught one of the escorts, female, having sex with one of the male inmates. Outside, standing up in the middle of a field, having sex. I asked her about it and she said she was bored and she thought he was attractive. Totally consensual. Women were no longer allowed to escort the prisoners. Super weird. Oh, I remembered one that my friend told me. He works in it for the military and they were looking at network traffic and noticed something weird. Turns out a military guy on base was looking at child from a work computer. Stupid. Story 7. I worked in it in a large organization. I got a call about a workstation that was in a lab that didn't get a lot of use. It wouldn't take any patches that were pushed to it and was giving the users a lot of strange errors. I wasn't even able to connect to the desktop remotely, though I could still mount the network drive. I start looking around the drive in a few locations that viruses at the time were using to store their payload, and didn't find anything, but happened to notice that the drive was full. This was odd because most drives at the place didn't even get half full, and this computer got less use than almost any other, and the use it got didn't involve creating a lot of files, or big files. Long story short, I found gigs and gigs of porn on this thing, like 30-50 gigs of porn. Our sysadmin had an everyone gets one philosophy. No matter what you were doing, we wouldn't rat you out to your boss unless you got a chance to not do it again. Since this was a shared computer, and we didn't want to get involved with people we didn't know personally, we just deleted them. I mean, there's no way you can not notice that your 50 gigs of porn has been deleted. About a week later, we get a call that the problem is back. I check and the drive is full again. 50 gigs of porn downloaded in 1 week. Guy was fired that day. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, you can subscribe to the channel and watch the video on the screen.